Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rad Talk, where sports and medicine collide. I'm Dennis. This is Gage. We're going to be doing over a little bit different things today. Gage is going to go into some details of some questions that we got, and I'll let him take it away.
So I gotta first tell a little story here. All right. I
Mhm.
went to if you most of us I think most of the people they listen instead of watch, but if you watch our videos on YouTube or whatever, you can tell uh one of the first five episodes, I think we're on episode six here. I had a nice, just luscious beard. Um so I cut my hair and trim my beard at the same time. Like I don't do it, but I go have somebody do it. So I went to get it done on, Saturday or whatever it was, and I walk in and it's at Sport Clips, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. So they
Mhm.
print out this little, almost like a receipt, but it tells you like, hey, this is what he gets every time. So she's
Mhm.
like, oh, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z for the hair, and I'm like, yeah. And she looks at me and she's like, we're gonna trim the beard too. And I said, yeah, we're gonna trim the beard. She's like, how do you normally want it done? And I'm like, usually I tell them just like trim the dead ends, like don't take
Mhm.
much length, just make me look not homeless. And then on the mustache, like I don't want to eat it. Like when I'm eating real food, I don't want the mustache in my mouth too. But I was like,
Mhm.
this time I think you can take a little bit of length. I was like, I'm tired of having such a long. It's getting warm, here everywhere.
Sure. Right.
So I told her that, and she didn't say anything else. She said, okay, that's fine.
Mhm.
In my mind, I'm like, okay. Normally they ask like how much, so I'm
Mhm.
already panicking. I'm already panicking. So she does the side of my heads, the sides of my
Mhm.
head, and then stops and she goes to the beard and she gets this comb and she combs it out, yada yada yada, and she does the thing where she puts the hair in the comb and then uses the comb and
Mhm.
trims it, and she just
Mhm.
starts going,
Oh
and she took off so much. I panicked inside. She did the first side and she took off so much. I started sweating almost immediately. I was like, oh no, she's gonna take off way too much.
no.
And I was like, holy shit, here we go. Like, oh. So I did like, you started nervous sweating. I feel like sweat running down my legs and stuff because I'm like, you're gonna mess this up. But I can't
For
say
sure.
anything. Like I can't have you do one side short and then the other side like the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
So I just
Right.
let her go. And I mean, this is the result. It still hides my double chin, which is good. But I worked hard for that. You work hard
Yep.
for that beard. I'm like, I know it's hair and it'll grow back, but I was like, I can't go back to you. I didn't say this to her. This is all in my head, but I'm like, I can't go back to you. You just ruined my pride and joy.
Oh my glorious.
Luckily, she didn't mess the mustache up. They do. One lady did it. I like it like on the lip. One lady just
Mm.
said, screw it. Like I'm gonna go, and she just, and it's like all the way up by my nose, and I'm like, oh, I look so stupid. I could just feel the wind on my lip, and I'm like, that was too much. But
That's
moral of the story is make sure that they ask how much you're gonna take off that beer. They're gonna take the whole thing off.
Or
So
just sweat really bad. Yeah, you look different from our main
yeah,
photo there. You've
I feel
changed.
different. Yeah, look at that.
Maybe we'll put a new photo up now that you've
No,
got
no,
the.
no. We'll get back to that. I worked hard for that. So, all right.
It
So
takes.
that was my weekend.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do, like Dennis said, a little bit of different take on things here. So we have a couple questions. One is they're both from Reddit, but one is very long. So I wanted to kind of break it down. Let me see if I can get the question. It's very long, and I think you can answer all of it. I can answer some of it as well, but the first part of it is very much suited for you.
Yeah.
So it comes from, and I won't say the username just in case, but they
Right.
asked, I pretty much just told them, this is who we are. I didn't use our names or anything. I just said, we have a podcast. If you have
Hmm.
questions, send them here, ask us, whatever.
Right.
So most people just ended up posting on the thread itself. So we got some good ones. We're going to start with
Hmm.
this one because it's something I've never thought about, but it's something you are probably, as we talked off camera, you're a little more familiar with.
Hmm.
So she mentions, or she asks, why do you think an advanced ultrasound practitioner position or advanced degree has not been implemented within imaging? She goes on to say there are advanced cardiac programs, but she wonders why, I shouldn't say she, but they wonder why there's not like a general, a vascular, or an OBGYN, specialty, etc. So we can start with that. Do you know anything
You
like
know,
that?
and when I was in school, I can remember teachers telling me that coming soon, there's going to
Hmm.
be a master's degree program for an advanced sonographer, or I mean, at this point, looking back, it'd probably be a doctorate's degree program, which is
Yeah.
where everything the world's going. Um, and I think that it's probably not happened um, because of the amount of, I guess, the amount of knowledge that we would have to, the probably the responsibility that we would be
Hmm.
taking on. Also, probably money. It would take money away from the
Yeah.
radiologists, which, I know other PAs and NPs and mid-level practitioners that have taken the roles of doctors in various ways. I mean,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, just taking over completely. I mean, they act alone. They stand alone. They don't even have a doctor that it says physician assistant, but I mean,
Hmm.
they can do primary care. They don't need a doctor
I
above
mean,
them.
even in ultrasound, it's already happened, or not ultrasound, but radiology, it's happened
Right.
specifically in ultrasound. It's never happened on the diagnostic side, which we'll get into their question a little bit more in depth shortly. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I already responded on Reddit, so I can talk a little bit about what I
Hmm.
said, but you mentioned one of them. But the big thing, so just NPs, PAs exist, but they're more on the procedural side of things. They don't
Hmm.
really do anything, so far, they don't do anything diagnostically.
Right. Well, and I met one radiologist assistant before, and honest to goodness, I didn't even know it was something that existed. But yeah, he was basically he acts as like a PA or NP,
Hmm.
and does all of the interventional procedures for the radiologist, and the radiologist kind of just oversees it, checks him, makes sure that
Hmm.
everything, the thora, the para, the whatever it is done correctly, or whatever he's doing in CT and things. And that was he had a bachelor's degree,
Hmm.
which was kind of interesting. I don't know if that is still a bachelor's degree. And I think in that thing, it might limit, because if you're a PA, I think you have a very broad spectrum of things that you can do.
Hmm.
Or if you're a RA, radiologist assistant, you're very specific, and you're not stuck to doing that, but that's what you do. And
Yeah.
so if the radiologists want to be the one to do the procedures, then I guess they don't need you. And so you can kind of limit yourself. But if you could get yourself a good gig where you're doing the procedures for them, and it might work out for you.
Yeah.
As far as practitioner for like reading ultrasounds, I've been told my whole career that it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I mean, I guess if there's something else I don't know about, but the more I think about it, the more I just don't know how it will exist
Hmm.
with reading and recommendations. Because if you're they said, well, it was always told to me that this would be an advanced sonographer that could read the exams and put a dictation to something. But, and I think you put something in my mind I didn't even think about, like if we need to recommend CT or recommend an
Hmm.
MRI, or like, that's something that, I mean, I guess it can be taught and learned over 2 years, or that you would be learning this advanced degree. But then the liability, when does the
Hmm.
liability get? Because a radiologist is
Yep.
going to be comfortable with putting somebody's name and then their name below their name. And I guess that's where, again, the trust comes into play. Because I even think that sonographers in other countries are a lot of times doctors, um, as opposed to the States where, we can do it under our
Yeah.
degrees, just because we've talked about before, you guys have to trust us so much that we're giving you all the images that
Hmm.
you need to make the right dictations. And if we miss something, then you don't dictate it. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. I
and
mean, we
so,
can't dictate what we can't see, what you don't show
right,
us. So,
right. And I think that's where, you got to trust. And then you also have to be willing to go in there and say, I need extra images, or you need to go get the images yourself how you want it to be.
hmm.
And I know, but you're in a busy hospital. You're like, I need to read all of these stat things. I don't necessarily have a lot of time to be going in there and back scanning for you all the
Yeah.
time. And so I think that leaves a lot of opportunity for like problems. Um, And so I just don't see. I don't know. Like I mean, could an advanced practitioner happen in ultrasound? Probably. There's a lot of things that happen in medicine that I'm unsure of that should exist.
Hmm.
Um, I think that it's possible, and I would have to like really think about like how it could be beneficial
Yeah.
to the radiologist, to the sonographer, and not like just the risk outweighed the benefits. So
Yeah. Yeah,
but
there
yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of things to think about in terms of
Mhm.
advanced. First thing you have to answer is, are they going to be independent or are they still going to be under us? Like a PA or an NP
Right,
usually is under a doctor that still
right.
co-signs all their work or whatever. If they're going to be independent, then what we're saying doesn't matter because they're going to have to deal with everything themselves.
Mhm.
Um, so I think the first issue you kind of mentioned is the obvious one, which is money.
Mhm.
Most radiologists, even if they're not comfortable with ultrasound, ultrasound's still a really good tool in terms of for me personally, I think it's better for screening.
Mhm.
So, you get cirrhosis checks, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
It's good for diagnostics, cholecystitis. It's actually the best. So it has its uses outside
Right.
of screening, but
Mhm.
I think it's a really good screening tool. It's really good
Mhm.
in kids because there's no radiation.
Right.
The issue in kids is just kids. They move around a lot. They're not always the most cooperative, which is a big deal in all of imaging, but especially in ultrasound.
Right. Right.
So it's good for screening. And with being a screening tool, you then have to know what to recommend next, which in some cases it's easy. So if you see a cirrhotic with a liver lesion, you're like, oh, this needs to be likely it's going to be an MR, but it's going to be a liver protocol, CT or MR. But
Mhm.
it can get a little hairy in terms of you mentioned the CT or the cholecystitis, and you said CT. HIDA
Mhm.
is actually probably the next step. So
Mhm.
nuclear medicine would be better than, in some cases, would be better than CT. So you have to think of all these things
Right.
about
Right.
what comes next. So ultrasound definitely has its uses, and
Mhm.
but getting back to the point of money, it's not super challenging to read ultrasound. Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward. So it's
Mhm.
easy to read for the most part, even if we're not comfortable with it. We'll take what you guys said and use
Mhm.
our experience, and it's usually pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
So it's easy to read most of the time.
Mhm.
It pays pretty well. It's still expensive to get an ultrasound. So
Okay.
the RVUs, the time it takes to read for what you get paid for it is worth it. So it's not something that radiologists are going to want to willingly give up
Mhm.
to, especially non-doctors. And the other issue with that is we've talked about it, I don't know, on camera, off camera, whatever.
Mhm.
Some places read OB, some
Mhm.
places read vascular, some
Right.
places don't. So
Mhm.
if you're at a hospital that doesn't read OB or vascular, then you're going to also be infringing on their territory by wanting to sign your own DBT studies or your own
Right.
whatever OB
Yeah.
scans.
Yeah.
So it's not just radiology that you would have to deal with.
Right.
And we're known for giving away things probably a little too easily. Or like
Mhm.
most people don't know that we used to do heart caths as radiologists, but we teach, now you teach the cardiologists do it, now they do it. We used
Mhm.
to have all the vascular stuff. Now we teach vascular surgeons to do it. Now they can do it. So we're
Mhm.
known for giving stuff away, but I think we would be a little hesitant in this
Mhm.
scenario to just freely give away such an easy and not good tool as like ultrasound.
Right.
So money would be the big one
Right.
first.
And and I wonder even, and then does that, and I'm like thinking ahead, but like does that open Pandora's box to maybe there's an advanced level CT uh
Yeah. Oh, of
person
course it does. Yeah.
or an
It's not going to
advanced
stop
level,
with
you know
ultrasound. So
and so yeah, does that, and then you're subsetting, yeah, like next thing advanced level x-ray, and then they read the x-ray, whatever it is, and then next thing you know, the radiologist, you're like not obsolete, but man, you're really shooting
I mean,
yourself in
some
the foot.
places, don't quote me on this, but maybe Oregon have already started letting like NPs and PAs read X-rays,
Hmm.
which out of all the stuff we read, you could say X-ray is the most straightforward, but there's
Yeah.
still a whole bunch of information to be gathered.
Right.
So if you look at me reading an X-ray, we'll take MSK because that's what I specialized in. I'm
Yeah.
going to be much better than someone who's not trained in MSK at
Right.
reading just a simple X-ray. There's so much more I could tell you that they can't.
Right.
So even for something as straightforward,
Hmm.
seemingly straightforward as X-ray, there's
Uh-huh.
still so much that we know that
Yeah.
non, radiology trained people aren't going to know. And
And
it's just not, it's a dangerous game, I think, for.
Yeah. And I feel like, I think I worked at facilities where if an x-ray was ordered in the ER, a lot of the ER doctors would read the x-rays too.
Hmm.
They would, read it before the
Yeah,
radiologist. You got to send it to VRAD or whatever, so that way they can get it
yeah.
quicker.
So that opens up another tangent, but they should be able to read preliminary their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for pneumonia and you see something that you think, hey, there maybe is pneumonia, and
Yeah.
clinically they have a white count and it fits,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Don't wait for me to read it. Go
Right.
for it.
Yeah.
But what they don't want is what the next aspect of why I don't think this will ever, no, I won't say ever, but the next issue, which is liability, right? So people that read their quote unquote read their own studies, they don't want the liability
Mm-hmm.
of whatever it is they're not looking at. So if they're interested in the lungs, that's all they look at. So they're gonna miss, maybe there's a bone tumor or something on the outside of the image that they don't see. They're gonna miss.
Yeah.
So if you open up for advanced imagers to read their own, then they're going to take if they're on there signing their own, liabilities on them.
Right.
I'm not sure, and we
Yeah.
talked about this again off camera. This is not something, and not something I experienced until this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm what's called a billing fellow, so I can sign, technically I can sign all my own reports as final. And here they let us sign our own X-rays. So I've been signing my own X-rays for 9 months or whatever it is. So it's not something I experienced until I got here. But when your name is the only name on the bottom of that report, even if I go, so if an advanced imager comes in and says, "Hey, Dennis, what do you think this is?"
Mm-hmm.
Usually like, "Oh, here, maybe it's this," yada yada yada. You're
Right.
essentially just giving advice, right?
Right. My impression.
But when then it's, so I can ask my attendings, "Hey, what do you think this is?" And they're like, "Oh, maybe XYZ." I'm still the one that has to hit sign on that report and take responsibility if it's not X, Y, or Z.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it's
No.
just not something you'll ever experience until you can final sign your own reports.
Right.
I mean, I still remember hitting sign on my first like chest X-ray. The first thing I ever signed was a chest X-ray.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it was negative, but you're like, this is a scary feeling because if this is not negative, now this is going to come back and haunt me.
Right.
So I think the liability aspect is something maybe you guys, not you, but as a ultrasound techs as a field wouldn't think about, because this person said what you have said before in the sense that, oh, I pretty much write the report for the radiologist. So, I could be trained to do this, which
Mm-hmm.
maybe is true, but you do write the quote unquote write the report for us, but you
Yeah.
don't take any responsibility for that report.
No.
So if we missed something and essentially all we did was copy your report, I'm the one
Yeah.
that's going to get sued, not you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
And I need to probably look into this more, because I always, as sonographers, we talk about getting sued or going into
mhm,
court cases and things like that. And so I don't know. I've never met a sonographer that's had to go into a court case because they did negligence, or they didn't
yeah,
see something, or whatever it was.
yeah.
I don't know how that would
It's
work.
probably because ultimately we take all the blame for it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the lawyer's going to say, well, why didn't you go in and scan, or why didn't you do this, that, or the other?
Right.
So, and I'm
Yeah.
not trying to absolve. I'm not saying your job's easy or anything. Like I'm just telling you, that would be a reality you would have to face
Yeah.
if you wanted to sign your own reports.
And I'll bet you too. I mean, everything is money driven. So,
Hmm.
the patient's going to come after the hospital because the
Yeah, yeah,
hospital's
they go
got,
after the big fish first. Yeah,
and then they're going to trickle down to the
yep.
doctor that signed it, because with your guy with malpractice insurance,
Hmm.
all those things. So they're just going to, and so no one's going to come after the sonographer who
Hmm. Yeah,
doesn't have the money, that they
yeah,
could. Why would you go after the smallest fish?
yeah,
It's not going to bring you the most amount of money or justice or whatever
yeah.
you're looking for.
And then on the flip side, if you're not going to sign your own reports, then you're just I don't know how to put this nicely, but you're just a glorified resident, right?
Mm.
And I've never worked with residents in terms of signing their reports until I got to here.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
have to sign their reports from overnight because they sign overnight studies by themselves, prelim. We have to come in and finalize it.
Uh,
And to be frank, I would rather just do it myself. It's so much easier to just create your own report
right.
than it is to say, I have to look at Dennis's report. I have to
Mm-hmm.
look at the images. Then I have to
Mm-hmm.
go back to Dennis's report and say, did he mention this? Do I agree? Did he spell everything right? All this information. So it takes me twice as long to go through your report and sign it than it would to just create it myself.
Right.
So and I mentioned this on Reddit, in my opinion, if you're not independent, I'd rather just keep it the way it is, or do it myself.
Yeah.
You can give me your report on your paper or whatever. Hey, here's what I saw. I'll say, okay, cool. I'll look at the images. Here's what he saw. I agree. I don't agree. But it's
Right.
just so much easier to sign your own, to do your own work than it is to check somebody else's work.
Right. And I think the only way I can compare to that is a sonographer with students, and we
Yeah.
go in, we allow the students to
Mm-hmm.
scan, and so a
Yep.
lot of times they scan alone in a room, and then you go in, you have to look at their images,
Yep.
and then you have to rescan to make sure that they didn't miss anything, or then you have to like
Mm-hmm.
delete images, and so you're just like, man, this would have been so much faster if I just did it myself.
Did it myself. Exactly.
But then you're
So,
like, oh, you're like, well, we all had to start somewhere. They have to learn.
yeah.
You have that curve. You have to allow
Yeah.
them to fail or allow them to try or whatever it is.
So those were the two biggest issues I saw immediately. I'm sure there's other more nuanced issues that we
Yeah.
could think of.
Hmm.
But the question goes on. There's another part that I think we can talk about together before we get to the last part of it.
Yeah.
But they go on to ask, how do you think an advanced image practitioner, imager, or whatever, could help radiologists?
Hmm.
So I gave a very quick example, which is we've already talked about, and it's kind of already the model,
Hmm.
but it's procedures. So it's
Hmm.
low level procedures like paras and thoras, thyroid biopsies, all that kind of stuff. I don't need to be there for that.
Yeah.
It's so much easier if someone else can do it. One, it doesn't pay very well.
Right.
So in the time it takes me to do the para, I could have read a knee MRI, which as a MSK train is going to take me 5 minutes. So
Hmm.
maybe I could read two. So the amount of time you do this, I just read two several $1,000 exams. They're going to pay us more.
Yeah.
They're going to be more mentally stimulating for me because that's what I enjoy doing.
Hmm.
So my partners are going to be happier because I'm helping them cut through the list instead of dicking
Right.
around with this para. This
Right.
guy comes in every third day. Like it's just
Right.
so the procedure aspect for me is the easy answer, and it's already in play. We
Yeah.
have one here that helps with procedures. Where I'm going as an attending has I think it's a PA that does all of the small procedures.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
I elaborated in the sense that they asked, how could we help? And with procedures in general, I've experienced this where I trained. So you'll be familiar with this. In
Hmm.
my opinion, it's not unique to ultrasound, but in my opinion, the
Hmm.
tech should get everything ready, right?
Yeah.
So if you as the tech,
Right.
Dennis knows we're about to do a para, he knows
Yeah.
how to set up a para tray, right? It's
Right.
not rocket science. You've done it before, you know what it looks like. So
Yep.
in my mind, you should set up the tray before
Hmm.
the patient, either if you have to go get him or someone else brings him in, whatever.
Right.
Set it up before the patient gets in the room. Boom, tray's done. That's the longest part of almost any, low level procedure is setting the tray up.
Cool.
So you set the tray up, then the patient is brought in. You do the consent, a basic consent, say, hey, here's what we're going to do,
Hmm.
yada, yada, yada. Get them to sign the paper. Then when I
Yeah.
walk in, I can say, here's my spiel. Do you have any
Yeah.
questions? Boom,
Right.
we're done.
Yeah.
And then if I trust you, so if I worked with you, I would trust you to do the next part, which is
Yeah.
then you scan, right? So everyone should do a quick scan of the area.
For sure.
Um, if you find it, mark
Hmm.
it. I'll let
Right.
you mark the skin,
Yeah.
whether it's a parathora, if it's a biopsy, whatever. You
Hmm.
mark it, you
Hmm.
clean it. So
Hmm.
by the time I walk in the room, all I say is, "Hey, I'm Dr. Eggers. Boom. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Dennis has already briefly explained to you. Here's the major risks. Do you have
Right.
any questions? Boom.
Right.
We've cut a 30-minute process into 15 minutes.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
walk in, I stick the needle in. If it's a para or a thora, I want you guys, thora less so, but I want you guys to be comfortable watching so I don't have to sit there and watch 10 liters of fluid drain out of his abdomen. I've had some, I'm sure you've worked with some where they're not comfortable.
Yeah.
I won't say his name, but we had a good tech, where I trained.
Hmm.
Um, you know who he is, but he
Hmm.
would take care of all this. You walk
Hmm.
in, you do it, you walk out, he does the rest.
Right.
So it's a 30-second thing, but if I have to sit in there and watch the fluid drain out, that takes time away from me,
It's a
right? I
lot.
can't be on the list.
Yeah.
So then you're adding time for me. You're making everything more uncomfortable for everyone else because we're kind of just awkwardly standing there unless we find something interesting to talk about. So I should be able to walk in, do it, and leave is the overall point of what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. And that's not unique to ultrasound. I think that should happen for all fluoro, CT guided, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's where you guys, an advanced imager, could really help.
Yeah. I think the only pushback you would get probably is the marking of the skin. I think that would
Yeah.
be
I mean, if it's a para or thora, you guys are going to scan anyway and find the fluid.
for
Just
sure.
mark on the skin and tell me where the fluid is.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Which
check myself. I'm going to, when I want, essentially, I want you to tell me where to put the probe when I'm about to
right.
do the procedure.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
don't like it, obviously I'm going to change it.
For sure.
Um,
That makes sense.
but I
Yeah.
don't want to walk in to do a thora and you're like, oh, I was at rib interspace 910 and I'm up here at like 5'6" looking for this. No, just mark it so I know where to put the probe. I can walk in and
Generalize.
be like, boom, we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not
Generalize.
asking you to pick a kidney biopsy site. Give me a rough general
Right.
area of where the kidney is. If this
Right.
patient's huge, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're
if the
saying.
liver, if you find the lesion that we're interested in a liver, just
Uh-huh.
either tell me
Mark.
in person, like, hey, here's where I was, or just
Yeah.
mark the skin, and
Right.
then I can change it. Obviously, I'm not. If I don't like it, I'm not going to go in there just because. Oh, I don't want to upset Dennis's feelings that he picked this spot, and I'm not. This is completely fucking wrong. I'm like, no. If I don't like the spot, I'll tell you I don't like the spot.
Right. Right.
It's just
Right.
more about like I don't
Hmm.
want to waste your time. I don't want to
Yeah.
waste my time. I don't want to waste the patient's time. So
Right.
if we can speed this process up, then
Mhm.
let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I really like, and I still have worked with a lot of radiologists that do these procedures, these different things. And I'm
Hmm.
now that you're mentioning that, I am surprised that more hospitals don't just hire somebody instead of, you like you said, you could have read X amount of exams that would have made the hospital more money. You would have
Hmm.
got more things read, as opposed to I'm pulling you away from getting things read, where I could pay somebody substantially less than what you would be probably bringing in from reading more studies,
Hmm.
and just let them do the procedures for the department in totality, whether that's
Yeah.
I need two PAs or two NPs or two radiologist assistants, and they just jump from CT to
Yep.
whatever it is. Now that, like, from like my business mind is like, well, why? Like, man, this is, boy, we're wasting a lot of money, time, effort, and maybe it's just we can't find people to hire who's a PA or NP or whatever that wants to work
Hmm.
in radiology. Um, but that should be like the go-to of everything. Like, let you guys like just focus on reading,
Yeah.
and then if we need you for something, like, you're there. But
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
you know,
be obviously we're not just gonna unless you're signing independently. We'll always be there if something happens. You just come get us. But
right, right, right,
usually these things are so straightforward that
right.
nothing ever happens. Or if
Yeah,
I mean, you could struggle to find it or whatever, but
right.
usually they're so straightforward. I think there was two other areas that I mentioned, and one we've already talked about. One was protocols. I think you guys should be heavily involved in designing the protocols
Yeah.
because you do it all day, every day. So you know how
Hmm.
to do it, the best way to do a DVT study, or best way to should a right upper quadrant include the liver or whatever.
Right,
So
right, right.
that was something. And then the last one was the questions. So I
Hmm.
said if someone calls and they're like, I have patient with XYZ, what study should I order? If
Hmm.
you think it's not ultrasound, like ultrasound's not the best modality, then
Yeah.
you turf it back to us. But if you
Hmm.
think ultrasound is the best modality, I think you guys are the ones that should take the phone call and say, oh, that's a right upper quadrant. Oh, that's a this or that's a that. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
it would just take away, because especially in private practice, we get interrupted a lot with phone calls and it just slows you down so much. Just dumb phone calls that someone else could handle.
Yeah. I, I think that's tough too, because then you're recommending something that we think, is, we're specialized in one field, where you guys know, I should do
Hmm.
an I think you should do an MRA for this, or I think you should do
Hmm.
a CTA, or
Yeah.
whatever it
I
is.
mean, we would be available. So if you could, you wanted
Yeah,
to ask,
yeah,
it would be easier if you walked in to my room and we had 15-second interaction
yeah,
instead of me picking up the phone call or picking up the phone. Maybe I have to go look at the images because they want to look at this for whatever reason. So I just feel like it would be easier
yeah,
if
yeah.
you stepped in and said, hey, I have patient XYZ, boom, you think ultrasound, you think something else. And then if I
Hmm.
say ultrasound, you take off and you say, oh, it's a kidney. Oh, it's whatever.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like anything. Yeah.
And then instead, if I take the phone call and I'm like, oh yeah, I think that's best suited for ultrasound. So then I wasted my time with the phone call. Then I have to, let me transfer you to Dennis, who will then tell you which, so then I have to transfer it. So I think if you're the point person,
Hmm.
I think it should be not just ultrasound, right? So CT could take the questions, and then if you guys as techs have questions, then you come to us
Come to us.
and we
Yeah.
can answer it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So,
I think it's tough though too because I feel like they want to go. I feel like a lot of times it's nice if they can go straight to the source.
hmm
Go straight to you guys, but same time, I feed these questions all the time where people do. They come and they say, I want this. What do you think? And you're like, well, I think
yeah.
according to in my world, this is what we would do. And so that there's just a lot of radiology,
I
man.
mean,
They
even the
they
question that you asked about the other day about the doing the vascular on the arm,
yeah,
you could answer that and say, hey, this is not
right,
indicated. They have a PE. You're going to systemically treat them with a blood thinner, so it doesn't
right,
matter if they have a clot in their arm,
right, where it stemmed
you
from.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
that's true.
but so that covers most of that question. So the last part of the question is we talked off camera. They specifically mentioned that things are kind of laid out really well. They mentioned that they have a master's degree
Mm-hmm.
already, so they
Mm-hmm.
were wondering what's, I guess, the pathway for kind of career advancement, and they specifically mentioned that it's really nicely laid out for nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you would be best suited to answer this part because I really don't deal with kind of career advancement stuff. So I'll leave
Yeah,
that one for you.
yeah, and I think maybe I'm biased, but I think I agree with this individual. I think nursing, there's a lot of landscape of you get your master's degree of nursing, and then you become a charge nurse, a nurse supervisor, and there's lots of charge nurses. Depending on every shift, you have a new charge nurse, and so that can give you some experience. Then you become a nursing supervisor, and then you become a nurse manager. You go AOD. A lot of nurses. I've worked with nurses that ran radiology departments, that ran ultrasound departments, that were CEOs of hospitals. I worked at. I think one of my travel jobs, the CEO of the hospital had a nursing background. But you don't see many like master's degree folks who are in X-ray or in CT or in MRI or what or
hmm
radiology modality that's kind of moved up to the ranks. At least from what I haven't seen a lot of folks that way. And so I've been throughout my travels I've been offered various supervisor manager roles, and I think I think it all boils down to if you can get to know people and people like you, and that's your best opportunity because you are you are limited to going up the radiology rank, whether you're x-rays, if you are a ultrasound, if you do ultrasound, you have a master's degree, which I have both of those. um, and I wanted to go be the x-ray, or I wanted to be a supervisor, I'm kind of limited to being the ultrasound supervisor.
hmm
A lot of places won't look at me as being an X-ray supervisor because what do you know about X-ray?
Yeah,
You have,
nothing. Yeah.
not yeah, you don't know anything about X-ray. But what's crazy is they'll look at a nurse, and I've seen nurses be
hmm
over X-ray, and like, what do you know about X-ray?
Yeah.
Not by less, nothing. And
Yeah.
so it's I think it's just how it is in the hospital. But I
I
think
think
if
we talked a little bit, but their mobility is much easier for them, right?
yeah,
They go through nursing school. They don't pick,
hmm
oh, I'm going to be a cardiac nurse or an ortho nurse or ENT. They don't pick.
right,
So they just go through a nursing school and then they can pick afterwards. So when they get tired of working in ortho after a couple of years, they can go, hey, I'm going to go do ENT or I'm going to go do this, which
hmm
then gives them more skills because they
hmm
just have a broader skill set. You get to know more people.
right,
So I think the fact that they can kind of move around and do whatever they want really helps them as opposed to the equivalent for you guys would be I have to do ultrasound. Oh, I also have to be registered in X-ray or CT or MR, which is
right,
not most of the time not practical. X-ray CT is practical because they're one's a glorified version of the other. But to do anything like ultrasound and MR are distinctly their own things, and they're both very complicated.
uh
So to be certified or whatever in both of them is asking a lot.
yeah, yeah.
So
and and I think that also helps with burnout for nurses. And I know nurses get burned out a
yeah,
lot not saying that, but
Yeah.
if you're an ER nurse and you're just like constantly getting hounded,
You just
or
get
if you're,
shit on by homeless people and all this other stuff. It can
yeah,
really take a toll. And yeah, like you can just, oh, I'm tired of this. I'm gonna go do
yeah,
the outpatient, right? I'm an
right,
outpatient ortho nurse now. Like
right,
they're not even remotely related.
right. Or you
So
can be a school nurse. You could work
yeah,
in
yeah,
with kids. You can be an OB nurse if you go to the OB ward, or you can be and there's other tracks too. You go into an ICU nurse, which could help you get on a track to if you wanted to be a nurse anesthetist.
hmm
Um, and so there's just so many nursing avenues that you can go to, which opens so many doors. And so I think that's the hardest thing, having a master's degree, working in sonography, is a lot of those doors that, and if the nurses go into these other departments, then they're meeting more people might like them.
yeah,
Whereas you're stuck in this department, and if you're not well liked, um, you might, yeah, opportunity for growth is, it might never come your way. And so the
limited.
only
Yeah,
opportunity is and I've been lucky traveling as long as I have, that I've ran into people that have liked me. And so like I've been offered different managerial jobs and given opportunities to move up that I've accepted at different points. And so I think that that's like the best thing you can find, is literally it's just people and
yeah,
liking you and giving you a chance, thinking you can bring something to the table. Um, but yeah, I think that's the only question or answer I can think of. Um,
I think we spent. To be honest with you, I spent way more time on that than I thought we would. So
we
we have
always,
another question, but we'll
yeah,
save it for the next episode because I want to
okay,
give you a chance to talk about um, some travel stuff,
right,
and
yeah.
then we're
I
going to
think
do the best part, which is the question. So
this is true. I think, and so we got a couple questions here. The travel, they wanted us to talk about anatomy scans
mm,
with ultrasound.
yeah,
The
garbage.
yeah, the the biggest thing is a sonographer, when you have people coming in, they want to know the gender. This is a gender reveal party. It's not a gender
Yeah,
reveal party. Like we're very much trying to make sure that your baby has a head, that your baby has a brain, that your baby has, all the fingers, all the toes.
yeah,
So I think that as a mother and father, you don't realize that we're looking at a lot of different things, and it's difficult, because
yeah,
the babies are moving around. You're not just looking at a liver, something that's staying still.
S- yeah. Static. Yeah, yeah,
And it's also where the babies lie. So sometimes patients might get upset that you're not seeing something particularly well the way that you want to see it, and so you have that patient go out for a minute or roll a certain way,
yeah,
or if we don't have time, you got to come back, which also sucks, because then we have to do it. We have to do everything again. You have to come back again, so you have to make that trip again, and so it sucks for everything. But like,
hmm
it's the best thing that we can do to make sure that we get all the images that we see, and so I think we kind of really beat the drum of, we're not just here to find out the gender. It's not what
yeah,
this is for. This is, if there are those things that exist, like I don't know what they're called, but where you can go there and like they take a bunch of videos and pictures and find out the gender, and like that's all this is about. But we're here to like try to diagnose and be diagnostic with this exam. And so and I think, okay, I'm trying to read what else, the next question here. Oh, and I think, yeah, and I think also they said it's misunderstood, like pregnancy. If you look at all of
yeah,
the movies and things
yeah,
where people are like, oh, it's just, you go in and they just put the probe on you and you just see everything, and like that's just the way it is. And it's like that's not it at all. Like one of the highest MSK injuries for sonographers come from people who do long-term pregnancy scans, because you're just how you're constantly moving your arm all over the belly
yeah,
and pushing in different places and move it. Like it's just, it's very conducive to injuries. And so this is a very like in-depth exam, to where sometimes, a lot of times, the OB doctors will even come in or
hmm
back check things, because this is, you don't want to say you have Miss Down syndrome or something like that. Like this
yeah,
is, as a radiologist, I mean, this is probably like a super a scary exam, because if you're going to get sued, I feel like this is a big one where,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you miss somebody's kid who has Down or something like that. That's
yeah.
a really big deal. Um, and so, yeah, I think those answered, I guess, fairly quickly what,
I don't think it's a bad thing. If one, I think you should stress. I can stress too. You're not allowed to say anything. You as the tech are not allowed to say anything to the patient,
mhm,
not just for OB, but in general. So
right,
I get peeved when patients are asking, like when they ask you guys, what do you
mhm,
see? I mean, if
right,
you're comfortable telling them it's just like a grossly negative gallbladder exam and you want to tell them, hey, I think I don't see anything, fine, whatever, that's on you.
yeah, yeah,
But I think patients need to understand that techs cannot say
mhm,
anything. So
right,
just because they leave, don't say anything, and they come back with a radiologist or OB or whatever is not
mhm,
necessarily a bad thing.
right,
Getting someone to back scan is sometimes, like you said, part of the
mhm,
protocol at different institutions, and it should be, especially for second and third trimester scans.
right.
Um, so I think
I
it's an
think, yeah,
aspect that people overlook.
I think in general it's a good thing too, because I think, like, if I have an idea and I say, okay, I think it's this, and I'm 99%, 100% sure, but
Yeah,
I want to bring you in and you say, yes, it's this. I mean, it's just getting another opinion. You're confirming what I'm thinking, or you're not. Like, we're giving you like supreme care. Like,
yeah,
I care about you enough. Like, I'm treating you like a member of my family. If I'm going to make sure that I'm right, and if
yeah.
I'm wrong, I'm making sure that I'm wrong, or whatever it is. Like, I'm doing what's best for you, and it's taking me extra time, extra effort,
Hmm.
but I'm going to get it right. And so that's our ultimate goal. And I feel like that kind of, yeah, the patients, literally I should say every patient, but like almost every patient asks me, like, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see?
Oh, they always ask.
And I get it. Like, and I say, like, that's a great question. We'll leave
You
that
just
up
give this
to,
like the vague answer, so
yeah.
it makes it look like you have
Right.
no idea what you're doing. Because
And
like,
I
what do you
think,
mean you don't know? It's like, no, I can't tell you.
right.
It's not that I don't know what I'm looking at. I can't tell you what I'm looking at. So
And I've had patients that and I know we're kind of getting off to the side, but I've had patients to kind of like nudge the bear, that they're like, well, you guys just don't know what you're talking about then. It's
oh
to
yeah,
see, to kind of
like
see if,
you think I'm a kindergartner? You're trying to provoke me into telling you what?
that's
Like, come
exactly what
on,
they try to do. They
Jesus
try to provoke
Christ.
you into being like, well, I'm actually smart. Like, I'll tell you what it is. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. And you're like, no,
Oh,
like,
you're questioning the
whatever.
size of my balls. I'm going to tell you what I see. Come on. No, I'm not. I'm not going to tell you that. And it's also, especially for ultrasound and fluoro, we do a lot of fluoro with the patient in the room. You're asking me one to diagnose it quickly,
Hmm.
right? So as a radiologist, if I were to come in, I had looked at your images maybe what 30 seconds, a minute. So I'm like, oh, okay, here's what Dennis thinks it is. I
Yeah.
briefly look at it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I think so. Let's
Right.
go. So
Right.
I'm briefly looking at it.
Hmm.
In fluoro, I'm looking at a screen that's not diagnostic.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna maybe my opinion is going to change when I go back to my station. I have a gazillion $1,000 monitor that I'm going to look at. It's way better than what I'm looking at. And I
Right.
look at it for longer than 30 seconds. Maybe I see something that I didn't originally see.
Hmm.
So there's plenty of reasons as to why I don't tell people
Right.
what the
Yeah.
what I see on the screen.
Right. That's just a smart. That's just a
So, and you're not gonna provoke me into telling you what I think I see, right?
right. Too much schooling,
Yeah.
too much knowledge, too much. Yeah.
I just have too much to. Everyone has too much to lose. If I tell you it's X and it turns out it's Y or Z, I have too much to lose.
Right.
So I'm just going to tell you, hey, everything, we're done with the scan. We got what we needed. I'll
Right.
go back and look at it. Your doctor will get a report and whatever, and then you guys will go from there. Like, I'm not going to tell you you don't have cholecystitis when it turns out, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
either it's equivocal and I have to now get an extra scan that I didn't tell you about or whatever. So I'm not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. I think
Like I,
maybe we'll have one episode where we just like all of the excuses that we have had to use of just not telling people.
yeah.
I
That's
don't-
not, most of the time I don't make an excuse. I just walk
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even
Um,
gonna entertain.
there's one sensitive. We've already talked about OB. There's one. If I do an HSG in fluoro,
Hmm.
I will tell them your
Hmm.
tubes are open because
Right.
they're the ones that they kind of freak out and they're like, it's a very invasive one. Two, it's I'm telling you in their minds, I'm telling them they can or can't get pregnant, even though it's not really how it works. But
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
do tell them if it's not normal, I don't say anything. But if it's normal, I'll tell them.
yeah, yeah.
So this discussion got me thinking about a question
Okay,
that's ultrasound related, and we all
okay,
have an answer. I don't know what mine would be off the top of my head, but I want you to picture, picture a perfect day of
okay.
ultrasound for you, 8 hours. I mean, you're just rock hard through the whole day, like nothing's gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a printout from the printer for a study,
Yeah,
and it says this scan on it, and it
yeah.
just immediately you lose all, just gone. Your day's ruined.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, what's your least favorite scan? And don't give me one that you like never do.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
want a
think,
scan that you do pretty. So don't say second or third trimester because you don't do it that often, even if that is your answer. I
yeah.
want one that you do pretty much daily, weekly, whatever, a regular basis. Like
Um,
if you're a dickhead and you're like, I'm going to cherry pick, this is one I will never take. Somebody else will always do this one.
I think as a, and you're probably not gonna like my answer, but I think
Oh
as a
yeah,
as a male, staying away from female exams if I
that's a
can.
perfect answer.
I
Yeah.
think I think those are the ones where, and I think this is where the department can work really great, is if you have men in the department and women in the department. As a male, we can do the testicles or the
Yep.
male exams, and the
Hmm.
females they can do the transvaginals and those particular exams, and it makes sense for the department. I think patients are probably less uncomfortable. I
Hmm.
know as a guy, like if I was coming in, I would probably rather have a guy,
Oh, 100%. Not even
uh,
a question.
yeah, do my exam, just because I don't know, it can be uncomfortable.
It's already uncomfortable. You're coming in.
Yeah,
You're coming in to scan my
yeah,
nads. That's uncomfortable. So I want
yeah,
someone who also has a set of nads to come
right,
in and be like, "Oh man, I can empathize with." Just like a female would want.
right.
You're coming in for a transvaginal. They would want someone who can empathize with them also.
Yeah,
Getting a transvaginal. So I think that's almost the answer I expected you to pick, since I
yeah,
eliminated like second and third trimester. I
yeah.
thought you would say that or something vascular related, because
I
I know
was
you don't
close.
do.
I was close to saying, I think a second would be like fistulas,
Shout
and
out Rod.
yeah, shout out Ron. And I only say fistulas because a lot of times the I've worked at facilities that they didn't exactly explain what they attached the fistula to. Is it a
Hmm.
brachiocephalic? Is it basilic? Uh,
Yeah.
you know, and so you're going in there and you're like, which vessel did they attach this to? And so if you don't have it like specifically written out for you, if they're coming from some other facility or whatever it is, like that can be like a pain in the neck because they can be tortuous, and you're like,
Yeah.
which vessel am I really following? And so those can be nightmares, as well. So yeah, but I think so, and I guess this is why men and women work great in the hospital is you have
Yeah.
both people. Yeah, and it is nice when I can go and I can tell when men see me and they're like, you know what I'm talking about, like when you get this and you feel this and you're like, I know
Yep.
exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
or when women come in, they're like, childbirth, and I'm like, I have no idea what
Not a
you're
clue.
talking
So
about.
let me go
So
get somebody who does.
yeah, find somebody who has an
So
idea of what you're talking about. All right, so I feel like we've answered
was
all
that
of.
all the?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some. I could throw in a couple other questions like the travel stuff. Pets were a big question. I could just throw that one out there for
Yeah,
just
go for it.
traveling with pets is traveling alone. It's difficult to find housing with the markets, how everything is right now.
Yeah.
I think houses in general are expensive everywhere. Especially, I need a furnished house. I need it for the only godsend is we need it for 3 months, and so
Hmm.
I can, as opposed to month to month, which is going to be a lot more expensive. I need it for 3 months. I work in healthcare, so then that person knows I'm going to pay you. I'm only going to
Yeah.
be here for 3 months. I'm probably not going to be at the house a lot. And so I'm going to be out trying to do things, trying to see areas. Because as a traveler, that's what you want to do. And so we're like the prime market of people who want to make
Hmm.
money, not get their stuff ruined. But then you throw in the pets. And I think a lot of people are like, my stuff might get ruined. Like you're going to have dogs that
Yeah.
are going to bark all the time, or the cats are going to scratch everything, or something like that. So that really makes it more difficult. I
So
have
leave those
friends.
fuckers at home. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. um, I would never tell you to leave your loved ones at home.
Yeah.
If you have somebody that can watch them or whatever, like that would probably save you a lot of more money because it's going to be more expensive. And then you're going to have to do, if you're traveling by yourself and you're working 12-hour shifts, you have to, I would think, take them to daycare or take them to,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a cat, I guess, it's self-sufficient, whatever. But if it's a
That's right.
dog, you need to give it stimulation and
Yeah.
those kind of things. So I think if you can do that, leave it at home, great. But if you have to take them with you, be prepared. It's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And
And
it's going to
to
cost you a
round
lot.
it off, I'm assuming none of that is reimbursable because
No,
it's kind
oh
of
no.
your own thing. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's on
Okay.
you. That's your life decision to have pets, which is a
Yeah.
great decision.
Moral of the
But
story: don't have pets.
I did not say do not have pets. I would never say don't have pets. Gage has a cat. Just he's
I
kidding.
do. Yeah. Um.
Yeah,
So okay. So I think we somehow managed to drag out 50 minutes, and we have to get my favorite segment in.
let's
So
do it.
I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to do the question or do you want to do like the this or that?
Ooh. Give me. You know what? Give me the question. Can we do the question maybe like two this or that
Mm,
or no?
let's just do this or that.
Okay,
I
this or
feel
that
like
is
that's what you're into. Let's do it.
okay. Let's
Okay,
do
so
it.
we're gonna do a little segment called this or that. We'll give Dennis two options. I'll answer it too, but you're gonna go first. I'll give
Okay,
you two options. You pick one and tell me why.
right.
These are just like off the cuff, very basic things, nothing um, weird. So the first one I have, I'm vague on purpose, but so I want you to elaborate. So the
Okay.
first one is hot or cold?
All right. So this was a tough one. I went back and forth. I'm gonna say hot because if I could live anywhere, I always would choose to live like by the beach, by the ocean, where it's
Yeah,
warm.
yeah.
Down south. Give me hot, but
See, I told you.
I won't hedge too much. In my house, I like it cold. I like
Yeah.
it
So this
cool.
it should be a straightforward answer, but it's not. I agree. I would choose hot because I'm moving to a hot state. Like that's why I'm moving there. I don't want winter anymore. I also prefer I sleep with a fan on even in the winter, so I prefer to be cold in the house. I also prefer cold beverages. Like I don't like hot drink. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink
Mhm.
hot tea, anything like that. So what should be a straightforward answer turns out is very nuanced. But
Yeah,
overall, I think we're both going to pick hot.
that's interesting because I don't drink coffee or tea either. Like I've never. It's
I
kind of
drink
weird.
cold, like I drink iced tea, but I don't drink
I
hot
do
tea.
like I like
I don't
iced tea.
drink coffee. Maybe I like iced coffee. I don't know. I've just never had it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so both hot. So the
Mhm.
next one, pro or college? This one's kind of easy, I think, for both of us. But
I've always took pro.
yeah,
I've went towards MBA. Everybody I've ever talked to, aside from probably literally you, has always
hmm,
wanted to talk about college sports and
yeah,
college this and college that. I think going to games, I'd rather go to the competition is so much at a
oh yeah.
higher level to watch.
It's such an easy answer. That's
Sometimes you watch
incredible.
a college sport and you're just like, this is
It's
why am
crazy. I would also choose
I
pro. It's crazy. Basketball is the easiest. The example that comes to my mind first because people are like, oh, college basketball players defense. They play
Mhm.
defense, whereas the NBA doesn't. I'm like, let's stop and think about it now.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
the guys in the NBA are freaks.
Yeah.
LeBron James is 38, has something wrong with his foot, and you still couldn't guard him.
No.
Jokic is 7 foot, and he can do all of this stuff. So I'm like, no, the guys in the NBA try to play defense.
Yeah.
They're just so good that they make them look like they're not playing defense. Whereas guys in the college, they can play defense and they're not very good at offense. So
Yeah. There's the
and
big
I'm with
disparity.
you. I would rather watch LeBron just dip his nuts on someone's head when he's 12 foot in the air, right? Like that's what you go to these games for.
It's true.
I want to watch Patrick Mahomes run around like he's in the backyard, making
Hmm.
these guys look foolish, and then he just flicks his wrist and it's 60 yards down the field.
Yeah.
Like it's easy. It's an easy answer. So
I think people would pick college because it's something that they could have played or maybe they were a
mhm,
part of. Like you played a college sport,
yeah,
and so you're like, yeah, like I was a part of such and
yeah,
such, and you have that bias of being a part of something, and so I think that's
yeah. That's
probably why.
probably fair.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, next one. I'll skip number three and we'll come back to it. So the next one is: would you rather drive an American or a foreign car?
You know, we might differ here. I'm going to say American, just
Hmm.
because I think it's easier to fix. It's easier
Yeah.
to be worked on.
Hmm.
Cars, I know cars mean a lot more to you than they mean to me. My car is what's going to get me from A to B. I don't
Yeah.
really care what it looks like. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to give me a Lambo, I mean, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm going to say American because America.
Yeah. I also took American because I like a certain type of car, which is a
Hmm.
muscle car. That's what I drive now.
Yeah, yeah,
Foreign cars, they sound different. They are different, whatever. I just like the sound of an American like muscle car,
yeah.
which unfortunately, given the electric era, is kind of disappearing. But as I become an attending, my answer is going to change because I can now afford a Mercedes or
Yeah.
a Benz or BM, whatever. I can afford, all that stuff now,
Right, right,
with the
right.
exception of like the super cars like McLarens and Lambo.
Yeah,
I can't afford those, but
it's going to be interesting with like you said with the electric cars because you're not going to have like I wonder if cars are going to like input like the noise because
so I forget it was Dodge maybe. They tried like when they revealed their electric engine, they
uh-huh.
they added a sound that was supposed to mimic the V8, but
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
the same,
No,
right? It's imitation. You can tell the difference between real crab and fake crab. It's the same
right.
thing.
It's like what was it? I went to a monster truck rally and I was like, can you imagine like all these monster trucks are electric?
That's what it sounds like as they're just
It's just all
cruising around the
you're just like, what the heck? Like it doesn't have the
grave
same
diggers, just
feel.
he's just trying to come on. No. I
Not gonna
want,
be
60-inch tires. I want,
yeah,
half a mile to the gallon. Like I want I want all that. So,
yeah, yeah.
but that's the American in us talking.
This
So,
is true. This is true.
all right. Second or one, we got two more. Next one, dogs or cat. This one's easy for you. Dogs or cats.
Dogs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to split my answer here. Currently it's cats because I live a lifestyle where I'm not home very much.
Yeah.
So for Sam specifically, if I put food in her bowl and water, I could leave her alone for a week and she's not going to care.
Hmm.
She has a box she pisses and shits in that makes it easy. If you leave a dog home for a week by themselves, they're going to destroy your house, just
Yeah.
destroy it.
Yeah.
So I think now cats. In a perfect world, I would be a dog person.
Right. Right. That's
My
true.
biggest issue with dog people is that they just adamantly hate cats for no good reason. Whereas cat people are like, oh yeah, dogs are cool. It's kind of like how I just explained. Dogs are cool too. But dog people just refuse to believe cats are a thing. They just hate them.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. I never thought about both ways like that. This last question, I'm not. Oh man. Okay. I feel like you should answer this last question first because I'm confused on
So
it.
we've worked in both, but would you rather work in an academic setting or a private practice setting? The biggest, what was the biggest thing? Training, right? Academic center is going to have a whole bunch of residents, a whole bunch of fellows. It's probably
Right.
going to be more subspecialized.
Hmm.
Whereas private practice is you're going to be more of a generalist. It's probably just you and the radiologist that you're going to work with.
Yeah.
Probably a
Yeah.
smaller hospital.
Right.
I don't know the difference pay wise for
Yeah.
radiologists. Private practice pays way more than academic pays.
Right.
Um, so for me personally, I'd rather work in a private practice. I don't want to work with residents or fellows.
Right. If
I
you.
want to make more money. I don't want to do research.
Yeah.
All things I would have to do at an academic center.
Right.
So
Right.
it's private practice is the easy answer for me.
Yeah. I think this could vary on what you're looking for. I think if you're young I don't know, if you're I'm just talking sonography wise. If you're a young
Hmm.
sonographer in the field and you want to learn a whole bunch of different stuff academic wise, maybe they're going to have a lot of opportunities, a lot of papers, a lot
Hmm.
of research. And so you might be a part of something that is growing that's in it versus maybe the private practice is just they've got what they do.
Yeah.
We're here to make money. This is what we do. We're here to take care of our patients, but I'm not going to bring in, we're not trying to do research and do papers and do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. This is it. And so I think maybe as you get more established and you get more comfortable in your field that you're like, okay, let's just like, I just want to do these couple things and go home. And as opposed
Hmm.
to getting something published or working on something, it just probably depends on the kind of person you are. I think for me, I like the academic stuff. I like still kind of like learning
Nerd.
things.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that we need to come up with like a cool name for this and that. I don't know. We'll think of something
Yeah,
like hot take.
just a fun little twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of just the general. We have questions. Don't worry. We'll get one of those next episode. But
I'm excited for that question. I've thought very heavily about it, which you guys will have to few in next time because it's a good one. And so I think
all right. So I think we reached the hour mark. So we'll probably have to cut it there. Give the usual spiel. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Rad_Talk_DG, email. I know we didn't talk about my side of things in terms of residency and all that, but if you have questions about that or any travel questions for Dennis, you email us at radtalkwithdg@gmail.com.
Yep,
and you'll know, depending on the question, will depend on who answers,
for sure.
But
and apparently
we're on.
Gage is on Reddit as well, so hit him up on Reddit.
Oh yeah, Reddit. Yeah. What are we? Spotify. We're on Spotify, Apple, and Podbean. I don't know how Podbean works, being frank. I don't know if it's a site you go to and you just like I know Apple, you go to it, you search Rad Talk, and then our picture would pop up and you click it and listen. That's how it works for Spotify. I don't know if that's how it works for
same thing
Podbean.
With Podbean. Yep, same thing.
Okay.
All the same across the board. So yeah, hit us up, guys. We look forward. We'll see you guys again soon.